Hey, son, you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Hello, welcome to Hard Compound, an American take on Formula One with your hosts, Patrick and Ryan. Race 6, Monaco. Wait, race 6. Only race 6. My God, what a season. Race 6, Monaco. Mercedes dominance. That's not an atypical story. Kimi Antonelli dominance. That's the story. All right, Patrick, this historic race, historic setting, Monaco. Who gets the flowers? Tell me why.
Well, I can tell you who doesn't get the flowers. That's
That's
the man from Monaco, Charles Leclerc.
oof.
But we'll get to that. I mean, you said it out of the gate. Kimi Antonelli, that's 5 in a row. He put in one of the most special qualifying performances we've seen in Monaco. Obviously, we know qualifying means a lot in Monaco. That might have been the best qualifying performance since we saw Leclerc in 23, I believe, 2023, which was another just remarkable qualifying performance. You kind of need that, just pulling a rabbit out of the hat, it seems like. But the whole weekend, he outshone his teammate George Russell. Another kind of surprise this weekend in terms of teammate battles, Hamilton and Leclerc. We kind of always expect Leclerc to be, best or at worst, the best Ferrari driver in Monaco. And the whole weekend, Hamilton was better than him, which is quite surprising. And then we had just other crazy stories. I mean, if we're talking who gets the flowers, most deserving, probably Kimi. But I'm giving flowers to Checo Perez. He gets Cadillac on the board through sheer, I don't know, everybody else was knocked out, got penalties. Perez maybe had penalties, maybe didn't have penalties. Stewards gave him P10 basically. And that is impressive and important, I think, for Cadillac. And
Is.
you just gotta finish, I guess.
It is, except I hate to break this to you, Patrick, because if I was in Monaco, I'd riot. But they took away P10. Alonso
Did they
gets
take
the
away
point.
P10?
They took away P10.
Well, that's disappointing.
I know that was even because Gasly had the
How
heartbreak.
But how long after the freaking race did that happen? I mean, at some point there has to be like a time limit on penalties, because this is even an hour after the race, he was still showing P10. 2 hours after the race, still showing P10. Now a few hours and he's not there anymore. That's shameful. To be fair, Alonso gets promoted to P10, so maybe Alonso gets the flowers.
Yes. But that's a valid point. I mean, you need hardcore fan like us, hardcore F1 fan, watch the race from start to finish and then be like, wait, who's first? Who's second? Who's third? Like, you don't know. Monaco was especially so weird where it's like, well, Gasly came in third. No, not really. What do you mean, not really? Yeah, he did. I saw it. I watched it. Perez got P10. I was, no. Here's why. So
yeah, because the Hulkenberg penalty that basically promoted Perez to P10 happened essentially immediately, right after the race concluded. So we knew that immediately. Perez gets P10, and pretty much everywhere I saw, he wasn't really under investigation anymore. I was under the impression that they had kind of cleared him, and apparently that's not the case, because I didn't check recently enough, I guess.
Right. You saw the race and then walked away. That was your first mistake, Patrick.
Well, even 2 hours after the race ended, I still was like, oh, Perez, he's still P10.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
It was a solid job. Although I think that's part of it, and I want to get to this later. But I mean, Monaco is so weird where it's like, wait, Alonso got points. How did he finish the top 10? But didn't he start 21st? Yeah. Man, that must have been a hell of a race. What did he do? How many people did he pass? What was that like? Well, that's not really how it played out.
He just finished the race without any penalties.
Exactly. It was like, well, you see the way they calculate pit speed and the way they turn into the pit lane. And it's like, it's sort of getting to a point where it's ridiculous. I want to say, man, Alonso just had the race of his life. You should have seen him weaving in and out the streets of Monaco. He went from 21 to 10. No. And it wasn't because there was all these crashes. It was just like, well, you know what? They were entering the pit lane too fast, kind of. the way they calculate pit lane speed is weird. And so, good for Alonso. It's just some of this is getting kind of insane.
You know what? We'll go with another guy that got promoted onto the podium at least. I'll give Hadjar kind of the spotlight because he was cursing and yelling and whining basically the whole race.
Right.
And somehow he ended up close enough, didn't put his car into the wall, and ended up on the podium in Monaco. That is pretty special feat for him and for Red Bull after a tough start from Max. So
yeah, and I will say I was partly right because last year I mentioned I thought Hadjar would have a better season this year than Antonelli. That's certainly not the case, though they're both doing quite well. However, what I said about Hadjar last year was he wasn't going to be intimidated by Max, nor sort of devoured by Max and Red Bull, because these regulations, these new power units, were so non-intuitive. There's so much about managing the battery, teamwork, the software, things that you may not associate with driving a car really, really fast. But these young guys, it was kind of all new to them. I don't know how Alonso or Hamilton or Perez are doing it. They're having to completely relearn things, it seems like. So, yeah, good for Hadjar.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the regulations, while, there's a whole kerfuffle about them and whatever, I think that's a different discussion. But to your point about drivers kind of needing to learn or potentially relearn how to maximize their speed, I think, that says something about how good of a driver they are.
Yeah.
And I think some of these drivers just sort of seem to be too stubborn and they're not really maximizing the capabilities of the car. I think realistically, some of the things these drivers are used to are changing and different, and you have to drive a little bit differently. But you've had enough time. This is now going on 5 months of driving these cars, and not too many races, but you've had enough seat time to be used to them and to understand, maybe the best way to drive them and kind of to match your style to how these vehicles behave. And I think, we're still just seeing some of the drivers be too stubborn and be frustrated that they have to change to really be quick. And that I think is embarrassing, frankly. You're getting paid tens of millions of dollars to just drive a car. I shouldn't say to just drive a car, but you're getting paid a lot of money by these teams to go as fast as you can. And you can do that. You're actively sort of choosing not to in protest, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's annoying to me.
Yeah. And I don't know if they're doing that. I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah, I am sort of like you. I'm at that point where I don't really give a shit if Max complains about the car anymore, or Charles, or even Alonso. It's or Hamilton. It's look, we're now deep into the season. We're starting the long European leg. This is the car you have to drive, period. That's it. So, and although you mentioned Charles, I mean, it was bad. I mean, he's a Monegasque, and we thought we'd get more from him. And when he crashed out, he immediately blamed the brakes. I was like, maybe it could be. And now, there's the whole conspiracy because Lewis, unlike Charles, has special brakes. He's not using the standard Ferrari brakes. And it's maybe that was kind of a subtle dig. Hey, why am I not getting this stuff? But, hey, Charles, if that's the case, it's brother, this is your team. You just signed that big long-term deal. You've been there for a decade. This is your team. If you think Hamilton's getting something special, why don't you have it already? You got to step up.
It seemed to me even like he suggested that he sort of actively chose not to use the new brake system that had been developed for this race, which makes no sense to me. If you don't like something and you think this is better, why not use it? He said, I felt more comfortable with brakes that I know. Well, you went into a fucking wall. So
right.
Don't blame. I don't know. It's just, he's sort of excusing himself from blame. I'm like, well, you chose to use those brakes and then blamed those brakes for your crash. And I don't know. It just seems like
But
it was bad. It was a bad
it was.
weekend for Leclerc, I
And
guess.
worse, but worse was George. I mean, it wasn't his fault really in Canada, but this is now 2 races in a row. The best car. It's, he's the veteran in Mercedes. Mercedes got the best car. 2 races in a row, 0 points. And it's looking like, because as I said before, I believe we're only going to have 20 races this year. So 6 races in, and Kimmy's got this huge lead. That's 2 races in a row. George gets no points. In this race, he seemed rattled. I don't know what he was doing. And my bad for paying attention to what was going on the front of the grid, but I don't even know. Like when he fell down, he was having to serve a penalty. I'm like, what is he doing here? Like I missed out even on what he was doing, but I'm like, George, I don't know what you've been doing this whole race.
Yeah, I mean, George was just bad all weekend, way out qualified by his teammate. So obviously he started well down the order, basically impossible to pass in Monaco. So he gets held up by Hadjar, I think, for a big part of this race.
Yeah.
Ends up with a 5-second penalty or whatever for speeding in the pit lane, as basically half the grid fucking got.
Right.
And then ultimately, the drive-through penalty that he got later, I think that's not his fault, right? The way he surfed it, I think, was kind of ridiculous. But I mean, there's a safety car. So you come to the pits, your crew has to know,
yeah,
you can't work on this car for 5 seconds. We have a 5-second time penalty. This is not George's fault that his crew just decided to get on with the pit stop immediately. And so then he had to serve this drive-through penalty, which was well awarded, but not necessarily his fault. My confusion, though, was that he came in to serve it like immediately after the restart. Like, well, if you just drive up the road, serve it on the last lap, basically, you might not fall all the way down the order. You might build up enough of a gap to be able to, gain some points. But maybe that's not how they're allowed to serve it. Maybe they have to serve it immediately. I'm not entirely sure of
maybe because I
how
was
that
like, is
penalty
George
was.
giving up? I was like, what the hell? Why is he doing this now? So yeah,
It just seemed like a weird timing. I was confused by that. I'm not sure. I'd have to check out what the regulations say about how you have to serve, or I guess when you have to serve that penalty, right? Because the 5-second or 10-second time penalties is, basically the next time you come into the pits, you have to serve it. Otherwise, it'll just be added on to your race time. But this drive-through penalty, the stop-go penalty, things like that, some of those have to be served within like a few laps of it being awarded. So that may have been the case, and he was forced to do that at the time.
Yeah.
So
driver standings, Kimi, well out in front, 156 points. That's 5 wins in a row. Remember in Miami, we were saying, is Kimi, he's looking pretty good. Is it possible he gets to 10 wins before George? And then we said, is it possible Kimi gets to 10 wins before Charles? And that's looking like it could happen. Damn. Okay. Kimi, number 1, 156 points. And as I said, if we only have 14 races to go, right now there's, we're expecting to have, 22 this year, but I still think we're going to have only 20. Lewis, a distant second at 90. George, a distant third in the same car. George is pulling Bottas. George only 88 points. And Charles in P4, 75. Oscar and Lando at 60 and 58 points. So Kimi, Lewis, George, Charles, then the McLaren, Oscar, and Lando. But poof, I tell you, Liam and Lindblad, they look like the young guns. They look like they're having fun, and that was a good race for them.
yeah, I mean, they're there. They're doing fine. The Racing Bulls looks acceptable. I think Lindblad got pretty lucky with that red flag. Otherwise, he definitely would have ended up outside the points, I believe.
Yeah. But it's good.
I mean, there were a lot of guys that you could say got lucky in this race and ended up much higher in the standings than they would have. So, I mean, you got to finish the race. You got to drive, well. He went long on his tires, just kind of waiting and seeing. And it ended up working out really well for him. And, Lawson right up there, P5. The other finishing, Red Bull, P3. So that's 3 cars in the top 6 for
I
those.
mean, Ford, this is the first year Ford enters. And we just hear that, Lewis talked about this after the race, but Ford has the fastest, the best ICE engine. And so Ford Red Bull, so all the ADUO tokens or however they distribute it are going to go. I think Mercedes gets 1, Ferrari and Audi gets 2, and I think Honda's going to get 30.
Yeah, something like that.
But I mean, one of the reasons why I was peeved that Sergio got dinged with that penalty is this turned out to be a pretty damn good series for the American-ish teams. I mean, Behrman with Haas, not so much, but Haas got in the points. Racing Bulls, Ford Racing Bulls, Ford Red Bulls, Cadillac almost. That looked pretty good.
It looked pretty good. I mean, I think, when at least one of your cars finishes, that seems like a win for most of these teams, right, on the season. So
Yeah.
for you to have at least one car finish and get points, that's pretty big. So good for Haas. The Perez thing is a bummer.
Yeah, we almost had
That's
three.
tough. But they're looking like they're sort of at least improving, at least, kind of working their way into F1 and, not really being shamefully bad.
Right. I mean, remember like years, especially say years 2 and 3 for Haas, how bad it looked. Cadillac is the real deal, I think. I mean, this is first year. Yes, it's not their own engine yet. They're what is it, Ferrari, they're getting their engine from, but they're actively working on that. And they said they're ahead of schedule. They'll be ready definitely by 2030. So, I mean, I think it's going pretty well. All right, let's real quick team standings. Mercedes, even though George gets 0 points 2 races in a row, Mercedes is at 244. Ferrari distant second at 165. And McLaren, 118. Dang. I don't see them catching up. So I thought they still had a chance, but now after Monaco, I'm less convinced. Red Bull, 4th, 72 points. That is such a huge drop. They're not even a third of Mercedes. And then Alpine and Racing Bull. So Alpine is technically 5th at 41, and Racing Bull's right behind him at 39. So that's nice to see.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, Alpine, who'd have thunk it? I am shocked that they have as many points as they do. Gasly has been quite good. He turned it around this weekend, so that was good to see. Tough to get penalized like he did. Yeah, I don't know what was going on with their sort of pit speed limits, but that's a good top 5. Williams was able to get some points this weekend also.
I thought they might get both guys in. The sign I think he was hit by Hulkenberg. It was
He got hit by Hulkenberg and then Colapinto on the same lap and just was like, yeah, we're done here now. So
yeah, and
that
Behrman
was tough.
I mean, I talk about Behrman as kind of the next big superstar. Right now, Kimi Antonelli is that guy, but Ollie Behrman, young, fun, gonna drive for Ferrari one day, I believe, but I don't know. Didn't quite work out well for him today either.
Yeah, I mean we'll see how Haas keeps going. Ocon getting in the points was nice. I think Behrman had last year especially was really good. I think this year's gotten off to a little bit of a slower start, but that Haas I think has been a little trickier to get going. We'll see how they do. We kind of expected Behrman to get promoted to Ferrari at some point. Depends maybe how long Lewis decides to stick around in F1. Leclerc obviously just signed that big contract. So I'm like, you know what? I think Cadillac should poach him.
That would be
Cadillac
great.
should go, you know what, Ollie, in 2 years, we'll be competitive and more competitive than Haas is.
Be great. How about Behrman and Herta? That would be great,
that would
Patrick.
be
The
fun, I
television.
think.
That would be fun. Like, look, Cadillac, okay, you're doing the not fun thing right now. You're doing the serious thing. Like, hey, we're serious. We intend to be an F1. We intend to be an F1 for years to come. Okay, but then now you got to get some fun. That would be great because Lewis is looking like he's having fun.
Yeah.
So he may not be retiring at the end of this year. I thought he might. He may not even be retiring at the end of next year. So where does Behrman go? Because Charles is signed up long term. This is, all right. Switching to the soft compound. Should we even have a Grand Prix in Monaco? I put this off for years because everybody says this every year. It's just an easy thing to sort of say, hey, I'm a legit fan. I'm a real good fan. I know what I'm talking about. Monaco doesn't belong on the grid. It's easy to knock Monaco. But I think now it's like there's a confluence of factors that I think we need to seriously decide whether Monaco belongs. One factor is, as we just saw in today's race, there's so many gimmicks. It's like, oh, we're going to have to artificially reduce the speed. Nobody really, even with restarts, Lewis gave it his best shot. Even with restarts, you pretty much can't pass. There's this confusion about how track limits, pit lane speed. We don't even know the full results, as you said, 2 hours later. I'm just not sure we should still be doing this in Monaco. The other big factor is money. They don't need this money anymore. I mean, look, there is no bigger nexus, no bigger locus of celebrities and money and showing off wealth probably than the Monaco Grand Prix. Miami's trying, Vegas kind of trying, but the money flowing into F1 teams now, every team's over $1 billion. In a few years, Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren probably will all be worth over $10 billion. They don't need this Monaco money anymore. I mean, what do you think, Patrick?
I think all of those things are true. I also think Monaco belongs in F1. It is the most special, longest sort of reigning track on the calendar. I don't know. Monaco is kind of the one race, I think, that exudes sort of the history of the sport more so than any other track. And I appreciate that. I mean, yeah, you kind of know what you're going to get with the race at this point. It's pretty much one on Saturday, which is not necessarily what you want in the grand scheme of things. But I think the overall spectacle and the overall weekend is deserving of kind of continuing on being part of F1. I think there's a legacy aspect that is valuable to the sport, and I appreciate it. And I think, people can say, oh, the racing is garbage. Like, yeah, and it's still fucking fun. Like, it's still cool.
You sound like the biggest F1 hillbilly in the world, but to me, Monaco is to the F1 what Green Bay is to the NFL. And my whole life is, Green Bay, that's the history. That's old school. It's in this little town. They've been playing NFL for 100 years. You can't get rid of Green Bay. But I'm like, hey, you know what? The NFL is worth $1 trillion or something. They can get rid of it. And they won't feel the pain at all. So
I think that's true. It's absolutely, that is a fact. Monaco could disappear from F1 and F1 would be fine. Nobody would realistically in a year or two bat an eye. But I like it. So I want it to stay because of that history, the legacy, it just feels right to have a race in Monaco, even if the race is, just sort of a parade. But
I mean, I sympathize with that view. Probably, I don't know this for a fact, but probably Monaco is why I'm an F1 fan. As a little kid in the 70s in Detroit, Michigan, you didn't hear about F1. You didn't know about Europe, but once a week, Wide World of Sports would come on. Jackie Stewart would come on. There'd be a very short clip of an F1 race, almost always from Monaco, and it just looked like that's magical. That's magical. So I want to keep it, and I also understand that Monaco isn't for us watching on the screen. All of us watching on the screen, it's easy to say, oh, no overtakes. What is with these rules? Why can't they go this fast? There could be 200 million of us around the world watching this. It's for all the hotels being booked. It's for all the celebrities. It's for all the yachts showing up. It's for all the rich people showing up. It's for that glamour that we all kind of want to taste. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I like Monaco. I would love to go to this race at some point in my life. Yeah, it's great. I think, potentially to your, I guess going back to like a football reference, it sort of feels like it could be one of those historic venues that because the sport is changing, the nature of the sport is sort of changing. It ends up getting lost or sort of that legacy and sort of history gets lost a little bit. Maybe it disappears entirely, but you think about how college football is changing and how some of these bowl games are changing. And, I think specifically like the Rose Bowl, which is probably the most prestigious bowl game in college football. But now it's just become some random playoff game that nobody really pays attention to the fact that this is the Rose Bowl. It's meaningful. Nobody cares about that anymore, right? So I think, it in sort of that way, I think that's the direction that Monaco is going, where it holds this sort of, it's a time capsule almost of the sport. And now the way the sport is changing, it doesn't really hold that value anymore.
I wonder, like, I've been harping on like having an F1 seniors league for years now. Maybe it's not a seniors league. Maybe it's just once a year. Like Monaco is the F1 All-Star game, but it's past All-Star. So let's say when Lewis and Alonso retires, they show up. Maybe Vettel shows up. Maybe Kimi Räikkönen, Damon Hill. We could have great old car. Just make this a sort of an F1 celebration. I don't think you're going to get as many celebrities. I don't think all the yachts will show up. I do think though that has potential.
I think that has potential. I think they should just get every actor who's ever played James Bond to drive around the circuit.
Yeah. Nice.
So
Pierce Brosnan tearing through Monaco in a tank. I forget which movie that was, but that was a good one. Switching to our Dirty Air segment, I see there is a new F1 2026 game update with new driver rankings. I want to get your thoughts on these real quick, Patrick. At number 1 is Max Verstappen at 95. He's the highest. Right behind him, Lando Norris at 94. Then George Russell at 93. Then Charles Leclerc at 92. Lewis Hamilton at 91. Oscar Piastri at 91. And then Alonso at 90. I know George needs to start doing a little bit more work, I think, to earn that 93.
Yeah, it seems. I mean, what do we got? Four champions, and 2 of them are behind George. I mean, I don't know. That seems weird to call George the 3rd best driver on the grid. I know, that might be recency bias, but I don't think I've ever seen him as the 3rd best driver on the grid at any point in time.
I mean, dude. When they brought him up, he equaled Hamilton. A lot of big Hamilton fans hate when I say that, but he did in qualifying and race over, what were they together, 3 years, something like that, maybe longer. I mean, he held his own. That's not easy to do. Who holds their own against Max Verstappen for 3 years? That's tough, but damn. Him at 3rd, 93. I'm not so sure. All right, then we got this.
Like Lando at 94, and what'd you say, Oscar? 90? 91?
Alonso's at 90.
So, Oscar broke down, I guess, at the end of last season, but he basically equaled Lando for the whole season in a team that was more or less favoring Lando. It seems like a bit of a gap there to be like, because Lando actually won the championship, he's like clearly much better. I don't necessarily agree. I think Oscar's basically as good as Lando is.
Yeah. Our next batch is in the 80s. I'll go through these real quick. Sainz at 86. Perez at 85. That was a bit of a surprise to me. Albon, 85. I don't know. Albon, I think Albon is in the twilight of his career, quite frankly. Hulkenberg at 85. Ocon at 84. What the fuck? Ocon at 84? Bottas is 84. My God, Gasly at 84. This is getting ridiculous here. I don't think Ocon, Bottas, and Gasly's been putting in the work. Spearman at 83, Hadjar at 83, Antonelli at 83, Borletto at 80. So I would think after this race, look, we know that Mercedes is dominant, but Antonelli, that's 5 in a row. He had the Monaco Grand Slam, which is quite rare. Whatever they throw at him, he's passed the test this year. So I think that 83 is low. But
Yeah, I mean, I assume all of these are sort of like more or less based on everything through last season and not really counting anything this season. So I would sort of understand like Antonelli being much further down the order because I don't think he really showed basically any of the talent that he is proving to have this year.
yeah. I mean, they've got
He really struggled last year, I think, and frankly wasn't very good. That said, some of these other ones make no sense to me. I mean, Carlos Sainz, I would have up close to Alonso, Hamilton, Leclerc. Why? I mean, he had more podiums than Hamilton did last year in a Williams,
yeah,
right?
true. Yeah.
And obviously more than Alonso. He was, yeah, I mean, just why is he way down there? That makes no sense to me. And then Gasly, he was in a shit Alpine last year, sure, but he is a solid driver and I think is, in a reasonably quick car this year, clearly showing that. So that's a bit surprising to me. I think there's some weird rankings going on here.
Right now, the third group, Liam Lawson at 79, Lance Stroll at 77, and Franco Colapinto down at 73, and then the new guy, Lindblad, they threw a 68.
Huh. Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily have any disagreements with that. I don't think Lawson was all that much worse than Hadjar was last year. So that gap seems a little weird to me. Stroll, maybe based on how long he's been in F1, I think over Colapinto, Lindblad, that's fine. These other two is kind of difficult to say at the moment. Though I think, Colapinto and Lindblad both have had some good moments this season, so
They're hanging
maybe
in.
shouldn't write them off too quickly.
Yeah. All right, well, let's ask the stewards. You don't have to have deep thoughts on these. I'm just kind of curious here. I saw Haas reserve driver Jack Doohan. Remember how he got jobbed at Alpine on a YouTube show called TPPN, which I watch bits of semi-regularly. It's basically these frat bros talking up the latest VC-funded tech platform, typically in Silicon Valley. It's a fun show if you're into that kind of stuff. But Jack Doohan was on, and I was like, hey, what the hell's Jack doing on here? He was talking a bit about being an F1 driver, and he has the hair of an F1 driver. Dude's got some great hair. But then he was talking about, I think he calls himself the CEO. He's certainly affiliated with this company called Muse. And it's funny because I looked it up, and it's sort of like AI for the food industry, like ordering food, sourcing food, managing food, all these restaurants and so forth. And I was like, oh, yeah, cash management for all of this stuff, labor management. Somehow you got to use AI. Everybody, look, you want some quick money, you sort of put together a company, call it AI, see if you can get some funding. So, and then hope some big company will buy it out. And you get a guy like Jack Doohan because you're like, hey, this makes sense. This AI, there's at least some rationale behind it, AI in the food industry, and we can get close to an F1 guy. We can get on F1 paddock. Maybe we'll get a sponsorship. This will be fun. Everybody's in on it. But as much as I like Jack Doohan, he just talked gibberish. It was gibberish. I had to go to the website to figure out what the hell this company was. Anyway, it was nice to see him.
Well, that's funny. I mean, I think a lot of these guys are trying to branch out. We had a discussion a few episodes ago about F1 being a platform, and I think a lot of the drivers are using F1 as a platform to kind of build their, Michael Jordan style portfolio, right? Where so much of their income and revenue will be well beyond their, F1 salary, driver salary, essentially. And so, trying to make it happen for himself, even, while he's sort of out of the main driver's seat in F1 is it's good to see. I like that. I think a lot of these ventures that these drivers are getting into, I don't care about at all. I mean, there's a lot of fashion and sort of non-alcoholic beverage companies, it seems like that a lot of these drivers are getting into, and I don't care about any of those.
Right.
But,
It's just their
the
name
more
on it. Yeah.
they do, the more I see kind of them branching out is I think it just speaks to the reach that Formula One has now. It's just so much broader than it ever used to be, and that's very, very cool to see.
Yeah. Now, next question. Do you think every F1 team is for sale? I mean, I guess everything is for sale in this world, but Total recently said no, he's no longer looking to purchase Alpine. I thought he never was. I think he wanted to get a little pretend because he wanted like, oh, let me kick the tires, let me see what's going on there at Alpine, get a little inside information while also bringing awareness to this whole thing and driving the value up, which drives the value up of his team and of the sport. But then we start hearing rumors that maybe the private equity group that owns Williams is looking to sell. And so there's Alpine, there's Williams. Zach Brown at McLaren keeps hammering that it's not fair that Red Bull also has Racing Bull's a sister team. He makes a valid point. I've always said, though, I think Racing Bull should be grandfathered in, but nonetheless, there could be that team. So, any thoughts? Do we think all these teams are for sale? Will they all have new owners next year? Some of them. So,
I I don't think they'll all have new owners. I guess I'll say that. I would not be surprised if Alpine was sold to like a private equity kind of group. But other than that, I don't see Racing Bulls being forced to sell, at least not this year. And I just I wouldn't understand why Williams would get sold now when the value of these teams is just skyrocketing. And really, you don't have to put all that much effort into it at this point.
yeah,
Like
somebody
it's just gonna go insane. Why would you not just kind of wait that out for a few more years? It doesn't make sense to me.
because Claire Williams sold way too soon. But if they sell now, that basically means somebody at that venture capital firm or the venture capital firm itself is in some desperate need for cash because, yeah, the value is definitely going up.
I would, it would be interesting to me though to sort of see who ends up purchasing teams. It just costs an inordinate amount of money at this point. You wonder like if Alpine is going down, like does the French government just go, we'll buy Alpine.
Yeah.
Like, we'll fund that project and make it I don't know. It would be interesting to see like who is continuing to invest in these teams and why they're investing, if it's just as an investment or if it's, for kind of other reasons, I guess.
Last one, my F1 con idea. I think it's picking up steam. Do we think this has a real possibility? So, as I said recently, I went to a Comic-Con. People dress up. You see the former stars. You go to panels. I think we should have this for F1 in cities around the world. Former drivers, mechanics, team principals, former owners. People dress up. Their kids dress up as their favorite drivers. See old cars, F1 cars. I think this could work, Patrick. I really do.
Yeah, I think this is certainly something that could be done, should be done even. You think about a lot of different ways it could happen, but I think there are a number of other sporting events that have sort of similar things going on, right? There's NHL hockey playoffs, NBA basketball playoffs going on. When these games are happening in other cities or even in their home cities, there are thousands of fans packing the streets around these arenas, whatever, like watching these games. Everybody wants to get together and support their team for these things. F1, that'd be so simple to organize. Like, the race is happening in Monaco this week. Well, we've got a big fan base in LA. Let's all find a park or whatever and set up a big, some big screens, whatever. Everybody hangs out, does whatever. I think this is all totally fine. The NBC broadcast a station in the US, they show Premier League soccer games. I think like 2 or 3 times a year, they have what they call Fan Fest, Premier League Fan Fest or something like that, where, obviously all these games are happening in England, but they'll show up and do their show from wherever, some city in the US. Tons of fans show up. They've got former, Premier League stars that will come and kind of talk, hang out, do whatever. They've got all sorts of events going on in these locations. This is an easy thing for F1 to do. I think it would be fun. And I think they could have several different ones, like officially sponsored F1 fan fests, cons, whatever, all sort of around. We'll see a race in the UK and then, have an event in Austin, an event in Brazil, an event in Japan, wherever, all at kind of the same time to see these races. I think that's an easy thing to do.
Cross the line. That is our segment where we predict the top 5 for the next race. The next race is next week in Barcelona. Last year, Oscar, Lando, Charles, or at least that was the Spanish Grand Prix. There's now a race in Barcelona and Madrid this year, so I could be wrong. But I know next week's race is in Barcelona. And in the cross the line, we predict the top 5. If our driver shows up in the top 5, we get a point. If he shows up in the exact right spot, we get 3 points. Patrick, what are the standings for across the line?
All right, well, coming in to this race, it was pretty close. You were leading 16 points to 14. Top 5, I think, after all penalties have been served, this is the top 5 from the race, was Antonelli, Hamilton, Hadjar, Piastri, Lawson. Your selections for this race were Russell, Hamilton, Gasly, Piastri, Behrman.
Oof.
So we got 3 points for Hamilton in second and 3 points for Piastri in fourth.
Okay.
0 for the other 3 you chose. My selections were Leclerc, Norris, Antonelli, Verstappen, Hadjar. So I got 1 point each for Antonelli and Hadjar, which I guess that means now, after 6 races, you have 22 points to my 16. So
Nice. All right, who goes first?
you have first pick.
Barcelona. I don't think Antonelli's going to get 6. I don't think Lando is going to be having, what is this, like his third? Is this third? He said 2 DNFs in a row, I think, right?
2 DNFs in a row, yeah.
Okay, I'm going with Lando Norris.
I'm going to take Kimi. I just, you know what?
Hot hand.
Kids got something going for him right now. I don't know what it is, but so I'll take Kimi, and then I am going to take, I don't know. Maybe, you know what? We'll say it's going back to back. Kimi, Hamilton, boom, top 2 on the podium.
This is a good one. So I'm going to go the 2 guys that they didn't have a good race this week. So I'm going to go George, Charles.
All
Man,
right.
I told you before today, George, Charles, and Lando come away with how many points? 0, right? That's 0 points.
And Max. And
Max. 0 points. Damn.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And Carlos Sainz, Max, Lando, George, Charles. Wow, what was the total points? 0.
Yeah, that's quite surprising. I mean, that was, we had a lot of those guys in our top 5s last week. So let's see who's left. Well, I guess, we'll take Max then. We'll see. Hopefully Ford figures out, that issue and he can actually get off the line this time. So that would be nice. And then I'll take Pierre. Let's go. Gasly. I don't think he'll get, that many penalties next week.
Nice. I wanted to take him. So I'm going to take Hadjar and I will take, let's see, I've got Lando and George. I'm going to take Oscar.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, so I've got Lando, George, Charles, Isaac Hadjar, Oscar Piastri. You have Kimi Antonelli, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Pierre Gasly, and
I think I'm going to say Hulk gets his first points of the season.
Any crazy predictions, Patrick?
My crazy prediction is that is very American, and it's that Cadillac and Budweiser sign like a massive sponsorship agreement. They do lots of, fun events and whatnot. And for the USGP and in Austin, they'll do a special like Stars and Stripes Budweiser livery on the Cadillac. And all of this will be unveiled and announced on America's 250th birthday, July 4th.
I love it. Everything about that is perfect. That's America. All right. I want to thank you all for listening to everybody's most beloved father and son F1 podcast. It is much appreciated. We hope you continue to listen and subscribe. And we are lights out.
See ya. Thanks for listening.